All right, party people, what's happening? And welcome to the very first episode of What's the Status? And this week we want to touch up on hip hop culture. Why did I decide to touch up on hip hop culture? Well, I've been in the hip hop scene for 21 years now. I've been breaking for 21 years. I started in 1999, August of 1999. And I've been very fortunate. I've been very blessed to meet many individuals in the breaking and hip hop culture scene. And as a result from breaking and obviously meeting a lot of great people, I was, given many opportunities to explore different avenues, different ways of things that has helped me out to develop myself into the man that I've become today. But one thing, as I remain and I keep more than a foot in the door with the breaking and hip hop scene is, this is, especially coming from New York, this is one of those scenes and cultures that you gotta have tough skin. Like many things that you get yourself involved with, this isn't just something that you can just come in and just get instant love. If I'm not mistaken, and obviously that's being me being rhetorical, breaking came from fighting. Breaking is a substitute from fighting. It evolved into what it is today, and things just came to be about so you don't have to use your fist on people, but you use dance as a form of expression, and then you used your crew to express that your crew was more dominant than the other crew. And that essence has lingered in the b-boy and b-girl scene to the point that, I'm at a position today in life that I guess it's maturity, I would call it, but I'm at a place in my life right now that I'm all about unity. I'm all about bringing people together. I'm all about wanting people to really understand what breaking is. I don't want people at the end of this episode to just think that breaking is a circus act, that breaking is just, you're just spinning around on your back or on your head or on whatever body part pleases you to spin on. But it's actually a culture. It's actually a movement. It's actually filled with people that are not only intellectuals when it comes to mastering their moves and breaking down on the dance floor, but also individuals that are smart, that are willing to expand and are willing to explore different avenues and use their background to help them excel and move them forward and not be stagnant. So I'm very fortunate actually to have someone joining me today that not only is he an individual that has inspired me, that has trained me, that has helped me understand moves and just the anatomy of your body infused with breaking. I'm so fortunate to have him as my first guest. I would not have had this without him as my first guest. But before I get into him and before I bring him in, I want everybody to take this one thing and this one note from me before my guest comes in and chimes in and even corrects me. I would hope that he would correct me, as he has many more years of knowledge and, he knows a lot more than me when it comes to this subject. But one thing that I want everybody to know and to take from this is that, unity, respect goes a long way. There's just no way around it. And the more we come together, the more we use ourselves, use each other in order to excel, hip hop will always win. There's a big misconception of where hip hop is. A lot of people think hip hop is a genre. A lot of people think hip hop is just people rapping. And I would love for people to take away that no, hip hop is divided into different elements, different masters and different expertises that came together and put this whole thing together. So on that note, I am very pleased to bring forward my first guest for What's the Status. First and foremost, this brother is the president, founder of Full Circle Soldiers and Production, along with his wife, Rockefeller. He's been featured in some, little projects like, KRS-One, Step Into a World. He's also featured with Fabulous at the Holla Back video, which, by the way, that video was so dope. When I was just starting off with breaking, that video was everything to me. And of course, I gotta drop the name. He was also featured with Will Smith in the Will Smith So Fresh video. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, put your hands together, or just imagine as if you're clapping your hands, and help me welcome B-Boy Kwikstep. Dímelo, Kwikstep. What's happening, my brother?
What's up, man? How you doing? Thank you for having me.
Nah, my brother, I gotta give you the thanks, because honestly, I want people to know who Kwikstep is, and I'm honored that you are giving me the time. One shout out that I sort of forgot to give you is that not only are you president of Full Circle Productions and Full Circle Soldiers, and you've been featured in music videos, but you're also a professor. So, what better way to talk about the hip hop culture having an intellectual man as yourself that has done nothing but seek knowledge and also teach knowledge? So, I'm very honored and happy to have you here, man.
I'm
What's
good,
happening?
man. Just really amazed at what's happening now in society as people are, grappling with this new word called social distancing. But social distancing has been happening for a very long time. Ever since social media came into play, yes, it has brought, I think, people together in a way where they can communicate, but the lack of communication on the flip side of that is really amazing to, uh, to deal with. But what it does give is an opportunity for people to get closer in the real world, and people are
Yeah.
now realizing that. I realized it when I first came into the scene with social media because I've been dealing with community one on one for all my life. I grew up in the streets with hip hop, in the community centers, in the skating rinks, in the clubs. And for the people who grew up in the virtual world and didn't have that, when this virtual world begins to be dealt with, they don't have something to reach back to that they came from. You understand? Like I came
Right.
from a
Right.
different world into the virtual world, so I can go back to the other world. And I don't want to say real world because the virtual world to many is their real world, but it's not as real as they think. And as a matter of fact, I was just looking at something on Netflix. I forgot the name of it already, but it's a documentary or a possible series. I think it's a one-time hit. Um, about social media and the responsibility that these people who invented it have to correct what's happening with social media right now, which is, actually puppeteering society. And that being said,
Yeah.
hip hop was the thing to help people give control over themselves, an identity where they could reach deep down inside and still say, I'm somebody, and to be specific, I am somebody, which came right after the civil rights movement ended. You know, when you heard the rhymes, I am a somebody, and the rhymes, right?
Yeah.
That was that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
that came from original marching chants. I am somebody, right? Or just plain and simple, I'm a man, right? So
Right.
it was a
Right.
way for people to express their voices and to be heard despite of third world conditions in places like the Bronx and the Lower East Side and in Brooklyn and Bed-Stuy and just all of New York City. When in the 70s there was in the papers New York can just lay down and die for all we care, and that kind of almost tried to happen around this time. People are waiting. A lot of people have left New York City, but the people who have stayed are the ones who are going to help make the city rise again, and that's in the spirit of hip hop, right? Except hip hop came from the
Absolutely.
people, and specifically people of color, the Pan African contingency.
That's actually something that you and I had talked about when I had first asked you if you would want to be part of this podcast because you know there's a lot of misconception of what hip hop is, and I don't mean to cut you off. I want you to continue on that note, but not only is hip hop a culture, but it is
Hmm.
compromised and created, like the legs that hold up the table of hip hop is comprised of the people, specifically the ones that started hip hop here in New York City, and you just touched up on black and brown people. So could you elaborate a little more on that?
I think you know you have people of Pan African descent. There's a big discussion happening now about what that is, right? So you have what they call African American, right? And for the most part, African Americans is an identity that was put on the people that they call African Americans. And, you know, when they call people black, black is a color, it's not a culture, right? And so what it does, even when they label people white people, which that's a new term, you know, that was developed within this century. Before white people, they were Polish, German, Scottish, right? And black people are more than black people. They come from all over the world. And African American is to erase the identity of your background and where you come from. And that being said, when hip hop was born, there was a thing called the organization, which then turned into Zulu Nation, which then people began to know as Universal Zulu Nation. And that universal thought process, we began to build on who we were as a people from all over as black people, from Puerto Rico, from Cuba, from Dominican Republic, from Barbados, from Trinidad. And I always tell people hip hop is made up of the mainland and the Caribbean, right? So African American and their Caribbean descent. So you have people like, Quirk, for instance, from
Yeah.
Jamaica. You have DJs that were Puerto Rican. Punkin from the Punkin All Stars, he was Dominican. On and on and on. Mr. Magic, he was Latino. Like I can go across the board, and people are really starting to get back to that and coming full circle to what that is, because the more you have people that know less about themselves, the more you can divide them. The more that they have in common, the more they are going to unify and have
Right.
common ground. And human nature, when it deals with power and doesn't know what to do with power, it's self-serving instead of serving the people. So the purpose for them is to keep people divided. And hip hop was an unexpected turn that united the people for many years, from its inception all the way, I'd say, to the mid '90s, and then it took a turn left.
How
So I
how
think
so?
we're coming back to through the music industry. The music, they took it and they were able to manipulate the wordplay and feed it back to us and feed ignorance and fuel insecurities. You see, when you have witnessed for generations people that look like you getting murdered, getting killed, uh, being characterized as stupid and worthless, there's post traumatic stress that settles in, self hate, insecurity. Hip hop in the beginning helped to alleviate a lot of that. There was a lot of messages in the music. And that came before hip hop when we were listening to the music in the 60s and the
Yeah.
70s. So somewhere along the line, they knew that this was happening. They said, we have to stop this. Now, whether it was, conscious or unconscious, it's what happened. How it happened, that could be controversial,
Yeah.
right? If they want it to be. But, you know, in this country or in this world, period, people are killed for trying to do the right thing. And I'm not religious, but I am spiritual. And I tell people, when when you start to talk deep about this stuff, they're like, "Oh, that's just a conspiracy theory." I'm like, "Really? Well, let's talk about Jesus. He was good, and they murdered him."
Right. Right.
So,
Jesus has made an
right?
appearance in
So
What's the Status podcast.
right? So, and so if somebody like that can be, put out to
Yeah.
dry, so can everybody else. And what that tells me is that in human nature, um, when you go too far against what people are trying to establish, whether you know, good and bad, they're just all really insecure about it and
I
don't know how
see.
to deal. And so I think the evolution of the human consciousness has to understand that we are better unified than not. But a lot of times, the human race, what they do is they need to go far left before they make it right. And I'll end
That's
it right there.
powerful. That's powerful. Good. I'm inspired by what you just said. And, you know, shifting gear, one of the things that I guess I pitched to you, Quickstep, when we were on the phone discussing on, whether you'd be interested in coming on board. The main reason why I wanted you to be my first guest is because of the fact that, I came up in New York City, born and raised here in New York. And,
Hmm.
I've practiced, I've studied, I've seen a lot of legendary b-boys from my generation and from generations before mine. But you've always been that one guy that, if one thing that I wish I could give to you, Quickstep, not to say that you don't have this, but I hope that people have more of a discussion and always utter the name Quickstep whenever breaking is referenced, to be one of the first names to be uttered in breaking. And I'm not trying to take away from what any of the other pioneers are doing, But there's one thing that I've noticed that you've done, and I've practiced with a lot of these other pioneers. I've learned from them because I believe you gotta be able to relate with everybody, and it doesn't hurt to learn something from every single individual. But I am, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
on a somewhat of a mission to put the name Quickstep out there, because you and your wife have been out there repping the breaking scene, repping New York City and the tri-state area all over the world. When I first came into
Mm-hmm.
breaking, I had heard that, crews out in Hungary were affiliated with Full Circle. Crews in Florida were affiliated with Full Circle, and it just
Right.
goes to show the range of who Quickstep and Rockefeller is, which I can't wait to have her as an individually here as a guest to speak, her mind and thought on that. But
Right.
you've seen breaking from when you started breaking quick to today,
Mm-hmm.
2020. I started in 1999, and before I ask you
Mm-hmm.
the one of the questions that I had sent you ahead of time, I started breaking because I saw this guy rolling around on his back while I was playing a video game. Because growing up in Washington Heights, I grew up in the wild cowboy area where there were gunshots and drugs everywhere. So my parents were overprotective. So what did I do? I'd stay home and play video games. I played this video game called Bust a Groove. There was a b-boy there named Heat, and that changed the world to me to the point that I'm here today. And as I've grown in
Mm-hmm.
hip hop culture, specifically in the breaking aspect of things have evolved. When I first started practicing with you, Quick, in 2001, I had learned forearm air flare, and I was ecstatic because that move was like one of those new moves that, like, like, oh my God, not everybody has it. But now in 2020, it seems like air
Mm-hmm.
flares is the equivalency of what back then was learning a six step. It's like, this is where you are at now. So my question to you, Quick,
Right.
is what's the current status on breaking today in 2020, other than the fact that we're all in lockdown during the COVID era of 2020? But, what's the breaking status that you've seen grow to be to today in 2020, the competition level, and how have you seen it evolve and change?
I think right now we're in the competition era, the corporate competition
Mm,
compensation era of breaking, and it's different from the community uh, era of breaking. The community and computation, right? Computation meaning the mathematical genius it took to in, to invent this through circumstances that people otherwise found impossible. You're talking about third world country circumstances, burnt buildings, dilapidated buildings, man, burnt down to the ground. Like I was in that series in Netflix called The Get Down. And when I show my college students that, where I teach as a professor, they're like, is that real, or is that CGI exaggerated? I'm like, no, let me show you some pictures. And I showed them pictures from a book by Martha Cooper called
right.
Hip Hop Files. Like, these are real pictures. They're like, oh my God. I'm like, exactly. And for this dance to come out of that is the ultimate expression of human oppression, which comes out into beautiful art that rocked the world, right? So that came from community and the computation of like, okay, we have nothing, but we're going to create something, and it was organic. You know what I mean? And and I say computation because every time we spoke, we like to build in the cipher, and the cipher actually wasn't a dance circle. A cipher is when five percenters and Islamic um, heads and Universal Zulu Nation would get together and build with knowledge. And people would say, "Yo, what's the mathematics for today?"
Hmm.
Right? Computation. And 360 degrees, when you talk about right angles. And when you look at graffiti letters, when you look at breaking, when you look at popping and the way we move through time, freezing emotions, all of that is mathematical. And then to the music, 4 counts, 8 counts, 16 bars. That's not an accident. It's not an accident, man. It's it's the past ancestry evolving in current times at the speed of
Yeah.
me through the people. You understand? But when the commercial aspect gets involved, and corporate people get involved, and it turns into a money making competition machine, and that's where we're at now. And so it's not a bad thing if there was a balance with community, but there isn't a
Yeah.
balance with community.
And
So that being said, we've gotten together with some people and have come up with, an organization called the United Hip Hop
look at
Vanguard,
that.
and it's going to go across the nation. And we have a logo for it and everything. It's Asia One, Rockefeller, myself. Uh, Technique is involved, um, and yeah, it's going to be really dope, man. And it's about coming back full circle to what hip hop culture is. And a young brother by the name of Prevail was one of the ones who helped initiate the momentum
That's
for
what's
that.
up. And, to elaborate a little bit on the question, in terms of breaking today, I know it's been heavily monetized. I have an
Hmm.
ongoing joke with some of, younger cats that I roll with sometime. And they're like, yeah, I'm going to go to this competition. First place is like $5,000 one-on-one. I'm like, what, huh? Excuse me? When I was going out for one-on-ones, I was content with a trophy. And I worked hard to build the
Right.
trophy collections that I built in my time. And then when money started to get involved, I'm talking like 100, $200, and
Hmm.
when I was
Right.
coming up, you wanted to test your skill. You wanted to call somebody out. I was a headhunter. I would pause. I was looking
Hmm.
for the best b-boy in the entire venue, and I knew where my skill
Right.
were at. I knew exactly that I
Hmm.
wasn't ready to challenge this individual. I just wanted to see where I was at so that I can go back to the lab and practice. But I feel like that's not really there anymore. Do you concur? Or do you think that like the competition level, other than people just wanting to enter competitions, is just something that isn't existent anymore?
Yeah. Well, breaking that is done for competition is different than breaking that comes from the
Yeah.
community. Community, is constant communication and unity. Community. That's hip hop. Hip hop (pop) culture is more about consumerism and how can we sell this? And so you have the difference between people who compete that can't rock in a cipher and people in ciphers who completely fail at the competition,
Oh yes. Yes, absolutely.
right? So, so what I teach is how to do both,
Yeah.
right? Because I came from an era where I learned on the concrete, took it to the roller rinks, and was in the clubs. And people who break at a block party, let's just take it back to the 80s. Somebody that is breaking at the block party is not going to really look the same breaking at a club. And especially if the club is like in Manhattan. Because Manhattan was the central location where everybody came to show the best of what they had. And it was like doing a show. You know what I mean? And you also came to Manhattan to dance in the streets, what we call hitting. And you learn how to perform. So I grew up in an organic environment with an incredible soundscape where that it really raised me to be not just a dancer, but an entertainer.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So now I know how to dance in the street, in the clubs, for the camera, and on stage. So for me, it's hard to bring a breaker now if you want to be an all around
Right.
breaker, right? If you compare, as far as the industry. So you have to learn how to dance on stage, in front of a camera, in competitions, and then still hold the respect of the cipher. If you can do all of those, you're the man. But it's hard, or the woman, because there's dope B girls
Absolutely.
too,
They've evolved, and
and that's
yeah.
not and that's not easy to do. So I compare it to the NBA, Harlem Globetrotters, and West Fourth Street basketball,
Mm,
right?
yeah, that's a great
Harlem
analogy.
Globetrotters can hang, yeah, they can hang with the West Fourth Street crew, and they can make an embarrassing statement out of the people in the
Yeah.
NBA, right? But they all serve their purpose. So to me, it's the same thing. You're gonna have the consumer competition for breaking, and then you're gonna have the cultural essence that comes from the community that also represents breaking. And so I believe that organically, there's going to be an organization that grows to, fit the people at the speed of need, and they're going to come up with crews that can hang with the top commercial competitors, and they're going to make a statement, and it's already happening. Like, Technique has come up with a scholarship,
Yeah, yeah. Shout out to Technique for
and
setting that up. Yeah,
Technique, right? I think it's at 5 grand now, so they can, represent a b-boy that comes from the community, but that is going to be able to be sponsored and have a scholarship to compete at the top level. And they have to give, their video of why they think they are eligible for the scholarship, and that is really great because it's community supporting community, and I think that's
yeah.
really
I see
important.
that
Hmm.
he started at like 500, and last I checked, it was at like 5K. And who knows, by the time that he gets to make his decision, where that will end up. And look, like you said, it's coming from the community and not from corporate hands,
Exactly.
and it's investing within the
Yep.
community. But quick, I got a really funny question for you. I know it's not one of the questions that I submitted to you, but it just hit
Hmm.
me because I was talking about this the other day to my girl Michelle. And I remember telling her I always went to jams, competitions, or even if I'm performing, I'm trying to be the
Hmm.
freshest kid on the floor. I just think that, like, I don't know, man. I grew up watching breaking, and if you see documented pictures, like Martha Cooper has a ton of b-boys that are so fresh
Right.
with the clean Pumas and the nice like mock neck with the plated belt buckle. I see. Last jam I went to, I saw b-boys that looked like they went to, like, I don't know, deep within their dirty laundry and picked out what was the least smelliest and showed up to a jam. Like, what's the status on that, Quick? Like, I had an impression of B-Boys being the freshest and you being the president of Fresh Kids. What's your take
I
on that?
think that we came from not having. So when we represented ourselves outside of the projects or the hood, we wanted to represent the freshest that we could. And that
Right,
rhymed without me wanting to rhyme, but you see, it's a natural thing that comes from us. Like,
right.
if you go to the Bronx or Brooklyn or Queens or Staten Island, people around the way are fresh. They might go to to the local bodega and have on the flip flops, but them flip flops would be from Jordan. You know what I mean? To have clean shirt, and if they're
Yeah.
going out, they're gonna look fresh. I think the population of breakers that are in the scene now don't come from the background of where hip hop was born, so there's a sort of a disconnect, and because you sort of kind of have everything right now, like your phone, your iPod, or your iPad is in pristine condition. So you're constantly looking at something that makes you feel good. So you don't have to feel good by wearing things to a jam that represent the feel good because your moves are the things that are representing. So I think this generation is like, I don't need to dress fresh. I am fresh. But in the generations past, because they had nothing representing them, they had to represent the best of themselves, and that was through the
Amen
gear. And you
amen
you
to that.
couldn't dress fresh without being fresh. If you dress fresh and you try to represent and you were whack, you got extra roasted, toasted on the floor.
There's a story I heard from Ken Swift where, and this is obviously paraphrased, but there's a story of Kenny rolling up to jams dressed in all white, looking like a Santeria guy. But there was a thing that, his thing was that if he came out of there dirty in his all white gear, that just meant that he needed to go back and practice a little more. I think it's really admirable to come out of a battle or a cipher and your kicks aren't all over the place, and these are things that I learned actually from you, Quick. And this is actually one of the reasons why I bring this up, because there's just, there's like you said, there's people that are not informed. And, this is why we need people like you.
It's funny that you say that because if you look at a lot of my footage online, not a lot, I'd say half of the footage
Yeah.
online, a lot of times I'm dressed in
Yeah.
white for that very same purpose. You know what I mean? And it also has to do with you know, um, did you just
Yes.
say Santeria? right? That's that's a
Yeah.
Caribbean thing, man, of showing up in white, right? Bright light white to represent like, yo, I'm bringing something here. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And it's positive. And if I can leave the way I came, I did my job. If you leave scuffed up, it means a lot of
Yeah.
different things, or it could mean a lot of different things. You know, it's funny when I come back from a jam, if I'm wearing white, after I come back from a jam, I lay it down on the bed and see where any scuffs are, and I breathe
Yeah.
in and I meditate on what that means,
Absolutely.
and I take it to practice. You see what I'm saying? So the significance of we're very tribal. If you look at tribes, when they go celebrate whatever it is, a birth, you know, um, you know, um, a harvest, a marriage,
Yeah.
they're dressed to the nines, bro, to the nines. And that's what we were representing in hip hop. It was very tribal. It was an extension of who we are as a people. And that has been lost because it has been, it's no longer community. It's corporate. And corporate, when anything goes corporate, it loses its communal value. And so it has come back full circle where people want to get back to what the community means
Yeah.
to hip hop and what hip hop means to the community. And not just hip hop, but hip hop culture. And dressing fresh to impress is a must.
You hear that,
It
kids?
is a must, man. And people, and people need to do that. And this is what I can equate it to. When you walk to school in your bummy sweats, you have a different persona. When you walk to school on your first day of school in your brand new clothes that your mother bought you or your father bought you walk with a different tone. We call it swag or flavor.
Um,
It's the same thing.
yeah.
Like I take poppers for instance, guys who pop. If you pop in a regular, regular jeans and a shirt, it's cool. If you
Oof.
pop in a suit and a hat and
The
some
noun later Gators?
really
Yes.
nice shoes, it's a different flavor that you add to the dance because you look and feel fresh. So you're gonna make sure that your moves are, they equate the freshness of what your appearance is. And on top of that, we were broke. So if we wore fresh gear to the jam, we made sure we were extra crispy with the moves because we didn't know when we can get the next pair of
Yeah.
sneakers
Yeah.
or a suit. You know what I'm saying? And we ironed our clothes, we ironed our laces, extra fresh. We came home, we cleaned it with our sneakers with the toothbrush. You know what I mean? So there was a pride that went into that. And I tell people that breakers from back in the day treated their clothes like
Mm,
how Marines treat their
look
uniform.
at that.
You know what I mean? And we had our uniform and we were the actual sword. So the sword had, you can't have a dope, fresh uniform and your sword looks rusty and unpolished. It's the same thing. You know what I mean? So when you have fresh clothes and you represent your moves through, your sword as moves, that
And
represents you. They have to go hand in hand. So fresh is the word, old school terminology, but and that was the thing. Fresh is the word, and that went across the board with everything. You had to be fresh on the mic, fresh as a graph artist, fresh as a breaker. Everything you did had to be fresh, including uh, being dressed to
and
impress.
that needs
Period.
to resonate with a lot because you got a lot of people now, not to throw shade at them, but there's a lot of people now that are overconfident and just put themselves out there
Hmm.
without being fresh and without having a calculated approach at mastering, a lot of things before you even put yourself out there. But that's a whole other discussion.
Well, I'm going to tell
Oh,
you
go
this one
for it.
last
Go for it.
story. I went to this club called the Fun House. I used to go as
Yeah.
a kid, and a lot of people from the old school they know what that club is. It's very famous. So I walk in there, and I'm broke. So I walked in that club with yellow sweats, bro, and a dingy ass shirt. I was a poor kid,
Yeah.
but I got in because all kinds of people can
Yeah.
get in that place, right? And what I saw was a dude with gazelles, a burgundy. He had on burgundy gray. I'll never forget. He had gray leaves, a burgundy mock neck. He had on a gray Kango. So you see the color scheme
Mm-hmm.
already. He had on Adidas with with burgundy laces. He was standing with his arm crossed and his feet in his b-boy stance, and he was watching everybody go down. And there was a lot of dope people, right? But there was this one dude going down, and he was dressed okay. He was trying, some 1990s. He would do like two, three. After a while, this dude shook his head, went out, did some really fresh top rock, and had the most crazy flavor, whipped into a 1990 and did a good six. Brrr, came down and crossed his arms. Like stepped back and crossed his arms. His Kango and his gazelles, his Kango was at a tilt. His gazelles stayed on his face. And he when he came down from that 90, it looked like he didn't even take a step. So he went into this top rock fresh, dressed fresh, went into the 90, and it was fast as hell. Brrr, came down and everything was still intact. And I'm like, yo, that is what they mean by fresh is the word. The next time I came back to the funhouse, I made sure I was just
He took
fresh.
the inspiration homework home.
You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? And that's really important. So there was a lot of pride that went into the people and into the power of what they did, and that led to the power of inspiration that influenced the rest of the world.
Amen. Now, quick, I got two more quick questions that I want to speed through real quick, and I'd love
Yep.
your knowledge. One of the things that I will never forget, wherever we end up in life, quick step, I will always talk about this. But whenever I went and practiced with you, and then becoming part of Full Circle, you know, when Quick Step stopped the music and you looked at the time and you saw that practice had 20, 30 minutes left, you knew Quick Step was going to work you out. You knew you were about to do some calisthenics that you were not going to be able to wake up the same way you woke up the day before. So at the time as a kid, I was like, ah, damn, man, here we go with the freaking lunges, man. I can't even go up the steps. But quick, your exercises, and I credit you individually, has shaped me to where I'm at today, physically, and has allowed me
Hmm.
to now in hindsight look back and be like, look at that, man. Like conditioning is so important, and learning the difference between training and practicing is such a big
Right.
distinction. They're,
Right.
they're so different. You got a lot of b-boys that they just go show up, they practice, and then that's a wrap, y'all. That's it. And that might help some people, but then you got people that can't make it past a certain amount of years because their body starts to break down. They start to lose,
Right.
a grip of their healthiness. So one thing that you said that I'll never forget is that you've got endless amount of ninja scrolls, like hidden art
Mm.
of like training. You like quick. Whenever you spoke, I listened. I was always that kid that was
Right.
just like looking, observing, and listening and soaking in. And you've
Hmm.
kept yourself relevant for all of these years. You can still nail down your head spins are fast and smooth. Your windmills and your backspin and your footwork. You're quick step. You're not half step. You're still quick step. You know what can you say to these b-boys that even at the career that they've created for themselves that don't know the distinction of practicing and training and conditioning? What do you got to give a piece of your mind on that?
Well, because the scene is so large, I can see who is training and who is only just practicing. And there are a lot of b-boys who are putting physical conditioning and plyometrics and attaching it to their breaking regimen. I can clearly see that. And that's great. For those who don't and just rely on just the flavor, that's cool. But at some point, you have to nourish your soul with, you know, an armament of knowledge to to extend your career if you want longevity, right? It's like playing basketball. There's a lot of dudes who have flavor on their basketball court, and they're nice, but they only last for so long next to somebody who's actually training. And there's people who train, and they're not as nice as somebody who has a natural gift. But what I've noticed over time, the people who have the natural gift and don't honor that gift, they fall to the wayside, and somebody can always outwork you. The harder worker is always going to
Yeah.
last the longest because they're going to put in the time because they don't have the gift immediately. They have to develop the gift. So somebody who's born with the gift can easily take themselves for granted as opposed to somebody who has to work
Yeah.
for the gift. So my advice to somebody who's going to get into this, fortify your body so you can, you know, feel you have a chance of sharing your gift with the world. And that world could be big or small. But when you share your gift with people, you get something in return, and it's called love. You get hate too. I'm not going to lie. But the love I'm talking about is the love you have for yourself because you're keeping your body in tune with your mission. And that lasts a
Yep.
lifetime. When you condition as a youth, when you become an elderly states person, man or woman, the shape that your soul and body are in is impeccable. When you look at boxers, soldiers, gymnasts, martial artists in their 50s and 60s, it's amazing to watch them because they can still apply the knowledge and express it through physical form. And that's amazing. So when I was young, I always had in mind that I wanted to be one of the, I used to say I want to be the Yip Man of
Yep,
breaking.
man.
But I don't want to be the only one. I want there to be an
Yep.
army of us, soldiers, a soldier, soldiers an army of Yip Men. You know what I mean? And because that way we could rock together. Because when you're alone, you could be one of the very few, but it's lonely. That's why I share my gift with people because I want to see them flourish. It's an extension of who I am. And then when you share that with somebody else, it's an extension of who you are. So it becomes one big family. And to me, this is the epitome of hip hop, right? Love, unity, having fun. Um,
I'm gonna throw in
and
respect out there too, because
yeah,
you can have all
respect.
that, but you also
You
gotta
know,
respect those that are still doing it
right?
and are sharing that with you.
Right. But when you have peace, love, unity, and having fun, that is great, but it goes nowhere without knowledge of
Yeah.
self. And knowledge of self, what that does, it's funny you say that when you have respect for yourself because you have knowledge of yourself, you immediately have respect for somebody else. Even if they're not at your level, you still have respect for somebody else because, and people remember that. People don't remember what you say, they remember how you make them feel. And I remember you guys feeling sore,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yes.
But but 2 weeks later, you were able to get the move that you were trying to get that you couldn't get before you met me, and what you started training with me. And that's the first thing I tell people. I'm like, I'm going to be training you. We're going to be practicing. Practicing is when we flow with the moves that we learned already. Training is getting your body ready for the moves that you want,
Yep.
and there's a
Amen.
big difference.
And I learned. Oh,
And when
I
you
learned that as a kid.
right, and so the reason I trained that way is because I was an adopted kid in the foster system, and I didn't have a father or a mom. Hip hop was my mom because it never left my side, and my father figure was somebody like Bruce Lee. So when I seek out father figures, there were father figures who were doing the ultimate to keep their mind and body in shape. One of those people was a coach by the name of Mr. Green from Newark. He ran a program called Flip City. And you want to talk about Shaolin training? Oh my God, bro. One of the things they would do, they would have this like plywood, like, and it would be like maybe 6x6 or no,
Yeah.
4x4. And on it would be, the rubber bands that hold the furniture on the trucks, when the
Yeah.
moving
Yeah. Yeah.
trucks. So he would attach those to these boards, and we would strap those around our shoulders, and he would have us do 5 sets of 25 squat jumps with those on our shoulders. So I didn't make you guys do that. I just made you do 5 sets of 25 squat jumps. We did 5 sets of 25 squat jumps with those rubber bands that hold furniture together on a truck on our shoulders, jumping up and down, bro, so we can be in shape.
And if you get
You know
pushed
what I
to the
mean? And you
limit,
talking about in the gym, the Boys and Girl Club gym with no air conditioning.
you came out of there.
And then after that, we had to run 75 laps,
Look at that.
bro.
No wonder you
You know what I mean? So
got fast windmill.
that's why I can't hang with y'all guys.
You-
Easy, right?
Exactly. Now, quick, shifting gear because I've kept you for a while, and I know you got a lot of things going on. But before we
Right.
conclude this episode, one of the last things that you and I spoke about in the phone call, and first and foremost, I want everybody to know that Quickstep not only is he a master teacher, a master trainer, a college professor, but he's also involved in hip hop theater. I've been blessed and fortunate to have been, directed by Quickstep when I did How to Break at the Here Art Center some years back. And I've
Mm,
seen some of your work through what was that rap one quick? Sinking Ink. Sinking Ink.
oh,
Oh
sinking
man,
ink,
that
right?
was incredible. Your work and your collaboration along with everybody that was involved with that production was just incredible. I wish it had a longer running, but sticking back to the topic, you worked with a brother that, like myself and like you, was part of hip hop theater in Chadwick Boseman, the late Chadwick Boseman. And you
Right.
met Chadwick Boseman before Black Panther, before 42, before, when he portrayed James
Hmm.
Brown. You met him as a young, up and coming, talented individual. And just real quick, I know, and my condolences, because I know you knew him and you guys were cool. But what can we know outside of what I just mentioned of Chadwick Boseman that you got to see in this young brother?
He was when I met him through hip hop theater, he was of course, a big fan of hip hop and was doing his thing. And he loved breaking. He respected it a lot. He loved hip hop dance. And we always talked about what we can do to help people and make this world a better place through our art. And I'm I guess, an underground cat, and he really liked the fact that I stuck to my guns and made sure that hip hop had a place to live on stage without compromising what hip hop is to the people. So for example, when we worked together at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, we worked together on How to Break, and he was one of the characters, and I was one of the characters. And he took my workshop, my breaking and popping
Look
and
at
locking
that.
workshop.
I didn't
You know
know
what I
that.
mean? And yeah, and he loved it, man. And he goes, man, I always wanted to do this. So there's footage of him online. He was doing a photo shoot, and you see him doing breaking moves. You know what I mean? And that really spoke to my heart. And there was a segment he did on how what were his influences and how he came to be in the industry. And then part of that reel, he included the workshop that he was in with me,
Nice.
and that really touched my heart because he didn't have to
Humility,
do that,
man.
man.
That's what's
And
up.
yeah, he like I said, he didn't have to do that, and that was his head nod to me, man, which I thought was great. He came to see Sinking Ink, and when he came to see that, I was, of course, I walked up to him, man. I said, Chad, man, I'm so proud of you. And this brother said, proud of me, man. I'm proud of you. This work you did tonight, man, that's
Look at that.
amazing.
That's what's up, man. See, I
And
love stories like
yeah,
this.
and we took a picture. Yeah, we took a picture together, me, him, and my wife. And we said, yo, let's keep in touch. We got to talk about some things. I was like, bet. And it's the last time I saw him because when he came into town, I think he came into town for the premiere of Marshall. And even though he was in town for the premiere, he came to see Sinking Ink,
Nice. Look at that.
which
It
I
stuck.
helped to.
He basically did what he complimented you when you spoke about being underground, that you stuck to your guns. He stuck to his guns because he is a fan and was a fan and admirer of hip hop. And look at him staying, true to his word, true to
Yeah,
his character.
when he got that role as Black Panther, those of us who knew him personally, we were like, that's he couldn't have nailed a better role, man, because that is him
Yeah.
off screen. He was completely for the people, man, and underground movements, and fortified his soul with that. And he was very diverse in his knowledge about what he knew, and he could talk about any and everything. And on top of that, he was humble. And so to lose somebody like that, it really hurt, man. I wept for like
Yeah.
2 days, man. I was so looking forward to him being next to people like Morgan Freeman and Denzel Washington, Samuel Jackson, and the like, right? It's just another, you know, representation on the shelf of who we are as a people. But his calling was for something different. So now he's on the highest shelf. So I can call on him as an ancestor, actually, and that's a blessing, an ancestor that I actually knew in real life. It's really it's deep to me, man. So But I'll leave that right there.
No doubt, man. I respect that. And, I hope that everybody who's tuning into this and hearing everything that you've said. And now, that's what I want people to come in here and leave with, oh, wow, I never knew that about Chadwick. I never knew that about Breaking. But Kwikstep, listen, my brother, we can go on and on because I still have questions. I feel like, man, as a host, I've missed out on this question, this segue, but quick. One
It's
of the
all good,
things
man.
that, What's the Status is about is we want everybody to come in with, preconceived idea of what the episode is going to be. And I want them to leave out with a wow, moment. So Kwikstep, as a recap, and based on everything that we've spoken about, is there a quote, is there a mantra that you want to leave everybody with before we conclude our episode? And, you got the mic, my brother. So let the world know what Kwikstep Full Soldiers is about.
Well, let me just say this real quick before I say that, what you want me to say. I have to say this, man. I found love for self in hip hop, but I found the love in my life through hip hop, and that's my wife. And we've been together now, going on 27 years, man. And this is the real representation of love in hip hop. Not the consumer version that's on TV, but the actual community version that's in real life. And I got to give her a shout, man, because she's like the backbone to my life, man. And without one another, we wouldn't be where we are today, man. So I got
Shout out to B Girl Rockefeller.
B-Girl
Taught me
Rockefeller.
tracks. I gotta put that out there. When I didn't know how to do halos and tracks, she was the one that taught me.
Yeah, man. And so I want people to, if they can, remember this date, October 11th, 2020. I'm doing a panel discussion on Zoom called Battle Cry, a discussion about manhood and battling in the street and club dance scene, in particular through the eyes of Black and brown men. It's called Battle Cry. It's all love, or is it? Stay tuned for the info. It'll be on Instagram and such. And my statement is, hip hop is not just about moves. Well, let me say it this way: hip hop dance isn't just about moves, but the movement of a people. And that's what I end with.
Kwikstep, my brother, I'm going to clap my hands to you, man. Listen, you've given me so much knowledge. You've given us, all of us that are listening, so much in-depth information that, like you've told me in the past, there's a ton of Ninja Scrolls out there. You've got your hands on a few of them, or lots of them, I should say. And we've all been very blessed to hear your take and your interpretation and your experiences with hip hop, with breaking, and everything that there is to know. Thank you, everybody, for listening in. Once again, thank you, Kwikstep. And, What's the Status? Episode 1 is concluded. Thank you, my brother. Everybody have a good one. Have a great rest of your week.
Peace.
For more on What's the Status and to stay up to date, make sure to subscribe and follow us on Instagram and YouTube at What's the Status Podcast. Also, feel free to reach out via email at what'sthestatuspodcast@gmail.com.